And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. You're tuned in to Tapped Out. Hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine. Only on the BetQL Network.
All right, I hope you're ready to tap out here on the BetQL Network. Maybe you're checking us out on YouTube or the Odyssey app. We appreciate it. However you got us, that's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. As always, producer Jake Noaker behind the glass. Let's go ahead and weigh in off the top. Canelo Alvarez took out Jermell Charlo last Saturday night. No big surprise. He was a huge favorite. Maybe some people thought Charlo could pull off the upset based on how Canelo looked against Bivol. He looked a whole lot better than he did that night. The question now is, what's next for Canelo Alvarez?
It's a good question. He didn't lean, or he's not calling anybody out. He's not setting anything up as far as him and Terrence Crawford is concerned. I think that is definitely the natural place everyone wants to go. I do wonder, if Terrence watches what Canelo did and wonders if the weight class jump is a little bit too much, because he did just see Charlo try and go up 2 weight classes to beat Canelo. And it really wasn't competitive at all. Now, I do think that Bud and Jermell are on different planets as far as boxing skill is concerned, but it is still a big jump size-wise. So you do wonder if he may want to go to a 154 first and then get to a Canelo fight, which is probably the path it's going to go. I know that he was very bullish when he was on like Rogan's podcast and saying like, I want to do 3 weight classes immediately, but it's a big jump. If I had to guess, he's going to take on the winner of David Benavidez versus Bubu Andrade. And I would guess he's only going to take on the winner if it's Benavidez, because I just think that if Demetrius Andrade wins that's a stylistic nightmare for him. He's not that well known, even though he's been an undefeated middleweight champion. So I would have to handicap it probably as we'll see what happens. If David Benavidez wins, that's likely who he'll face in the spring.
Obviously, Canelo looked great. How much of that was him? How much of that was Charlo trying to move up a couple of weight classes?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think they both fed into each other. I think Charlo is a little bit more gun shy. You didn't see a guy who, can hit and put an impact on his opponents. He got dropped in the 7th round. So I definitely think that him coming up the weight class and Canelo bullying him the way he did, making him so defensive. I don't know if the lights were a little bit too bright for him. I was a little surprised by that because he's got a very good resume for most guys when they get into take on Canelo, but it is Canelo. It's a different level. Everybody will tell you that. And if you don't have that boxing stuff to lean on, if you let Canelo bully you, it's a tough go. It could be a tough night. You really have to want to dictate that range and frustrate him on the back foot. And he wasn't able to do that at all.
BT, let's stay in the square circle because we're now, I guess, in the month, October 28th, of Ngannou versus Tyson Fury. The odds are out, depending on where you bet, about minus 1,000 for Tyson Fury. Did you see the video that came out of Francis Ngannou hitting the bags earlier this week?
I did. I saw he was getting ripped a lot for it. I think that people got to realize he's not a boxer. That's not going to always look fantastic. Conor got made fun of this stuff too. Boxers are always going to make fun of MMA guys. It's a different sport. It's different. Not a lot of MMA guys do just purely go train with boxers. Like, for example, one of the reasons probably if you watched a guy like Dustin Poirier go and train, Dustin Poirier goes to a boxing gym on top of going to American Top Team. He works with a boxing coach, and that's probably why he's got some of the best boxing in the sport. A lot of guys don't do that, and they don't do the drills that boxers do. And also he's very big. He's very muscular. So he's not going to look as fluid. He's not going to look like Tyson Fury, who moves really well for a big man. I mean, I don't think we marvel enough at how good Tyson Fury is for the size that he is, how light he is on his feet, the versatility that he has. But yeah, I think it reinforced a lot of people's thoughts is that he's got no shot.
No, I tend to agree with you. Dia Davis, of course, the boxing coach, friend of the show that you're referring to. Let's stay where he is, where you are, down in South Florida, because Jorge Masvidal has made his prediction for Leon versus Colby. And no surprise, Masvidal picked against Colby. We were talking about this off air. It depends on what the money is. You know what I mean? Like right now, it's pretty close to even. You can get Colby as a slight, I say very, very slight underdog. What if Colby's favored to win that night? Are you still going to feel okay putting money on him?
Yeah, I would still feel okay. I think if you like Colby, I think you already have the reasons you like Colby. I
love me some Colby.
Yeah, I think just he's not his style's not gonna change, or the reasoning why you would pick him, I don't think should be dictated on the number, because I don't think the number is gonna get big one way or another. I think that if he does end up the favorite, it'll be slight. If it ends up pick him, something like that, I still think that that's an okay place for you to go. I don't think I'd pick him to finish. So if you want to go that night and you're going to pick Colby, you can pick Colby by points, because I doubt very much that he is going to finish him or TKO him. I would say most likely he'd probably win a decision. So you'd probably get some better numbers at that. But no, man, look, Colby's good. Colby's a good fighter. Leon is really good too. But if you're going to go wrestler for wrestler, he's just a very different wrestler from the way Kamaru's a little bit of gonna muscle you around. He's gonna hold you up against the cage. He's gonna let you kind of get worn down and just feeling his weight. Man, Colby is just exhausted. He's gonna pick you up, put you down, pick you up, put you down, hit you with strikes while he's putting you down, then put you up. Like, it's just, I don't know how he does it. It really is a marvel, the kind of gas tank that he has. And so if you believe in that, I understand betting on Colby Covington going into that night.
Can you imagine? Colby would be champ, Sean O'Malley would be champ, Sean Strickland would be champ. This was never the plan for the UFC. Brendan Tobin, Sports Machine, Sean Levine, talking a little fighting. I missed this when we were talking boxing, so let's just jump back real quick. Tyson Fury and Usyk is now official in Saudi. By the way, Tyson Fury, the numbers announced, he's going to make around $200 million for those two fights. The fight against Usyk and, of course, the fight against Francis Ngannou. He's expected to bank around $200 million. Do you think Usyk is maybe the guy that can actually beat Tyson Fury? And we can finally unify these damn heavyweight titles.
It's such an interesting question because he's so much smaller than him. I mean, mind you, this guy was the cruiserweight undisputed champion of the world. So he's like 6'2". They might list him at 6'3". That's on a good day. They're doing some NBA height lying there.
How tall is Fury? He's huge.
6'9".
6'9".
He's a moose,
Powerful.
dude. And the thing I'd say with Usyk is a slick boxer. He is really good. I just don't know if he's got the power to bother Fury, and I just think that that's a problem. Like we've seen, unless you're like a real inside brawler, you want to fight a little dirty, maybe you could affect Usyk. Look, Tyson Fury's in his career been chinny, and I'm not just referring to Deontay Wilder. Obviously, Deontay Wilder's got the power of God, but even like Steve Cunningham back in the day put him on, who was coming up to heavyweight. So, Tyson Fury, you can get to his chin. It's just typically that was earlier in his career. He's been pretty hard to get as of late, and he's looked really, really good. I just think he should rightfully be a pretty heavy favorite. If I had to guess, probably like minus 300 going into that night. And I don't know. I think that he's going to there's a big thing with Usyk that people don't believe in, that he can take body shots. And I think that that's something Tyson Fury is going to expose. He typically takes your biggest weakness and turns it on you. That's how smart a fighter he is.
Let's get back into the octagon. We've talked a little bit about UFC 295. Obviously, huge fight. Maybe the last fight, John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. The co-main event, Yuri Prochazka steps back into the cage, takes on Alex Pereira. Pereira right now is the favorite at minus 150. I'm a little bit surprised. Yuri at plus 125. What's the bigger question mark? Is it Pereira, the fact that we've only seen him for a minute, or is it Yuri Prochazka, which we haven't seen now for a while?
I think it's Yuri Prochazka's health, because shoulder injuries are always a little bit squirrely, like how guys train, how comfortable are they throwing stuff. He is a very unorthodox, fluid fighter. I think we see like a guy like Johnny Walker, right, who is going to be fighting next week or in a couple weeks. And Johnny Walker had that bad shoulder injury, and it felt like it took him a while to come back. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they were apples to apples on severity, but, Yuri did it to a higher success level. But again, Johnny Walker, very fluid, likes his movement, likes to be unorthodox, and didn't feel like we really felt Johnny Walker come all the way back maybe for a couple of years. So I am curious about that. And that's a bigger question to me. But I still think that I believe in Yuri enough that I would still bet on him that night, just because I think that guy looks like the truth, has looked like the truth since he stepped in that weight class. We know he's got that dog in him, the way that he won the belt. And I thought that he was going to reign for a little bit. So I still favor him, but I definitely have questions about how healthy he is, for sure.
And as a bettor, sometimes if you think a fight is really even, come fight night, just take the odds, right? So if we think that Colby or Leon can win that fight, all right, who comes in at plus 150? Same thing with Yuri Prochazka versus Pereira. If I'm going to get plus money on one guy or the other, that's who I'm putting it on. Brendan Tobin, Sports Machine, Sean Levine. Before we wrap up this segment, we've got Bellator action this Saturday night. How about this one for the ladies? Kat Zingano? What? Kat Zingano versus Chris Cyborg. Cyborg, obviously, a huge favorite at minus 600. You going to lay down the $600 to win 100 on Cyborg? Your money, not mine. Do it.
I don't think so, man. I mean, though, like, listen, Kat Zingano at one point, she TKO'd Amanda Nunes. You know,
Well,
I mean, we're talking 2014. I understand yeah. It was 2014. It was 2014, and then she lost to Ronda Rousey in 14 seconds. But again, she TKO'd Amanda Nunes at one point. You know, she's won 4 in a row. She's obviously been through a lot in her life personally that kind of took her on a bit of a tough journey in her MMA career. But her Bellator run's been solid, and I don't know. You know what? What's the odds?
Right now, you can get Cyborg at minus 600. You can get Kat Zingano at plus 370. Call it 4-1. You're taking Cyborg. Come on now. Come on now.
Baby. It wasn't out of the question. It wasn't out of the question.
The main event, Usman Nurmagomedov, a minus 1,700 favorite right now at BetMGM. That's what happens when you have the name Usman and Nurmagomedov in your name. Your favorite to beat everybody on planet Earth. Coming up next, we talk more fighting. We appreciate you checking us out. It's Tapped Out.
We're back with more Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Hey, welcome back into the show known as Tapped Out. However you're checking us out on YouTube, the Odyssey app, the BetQL Network, we love you. That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the Sports Machine, Sean Levine. Let's welcome on friend of the show. He is Andrew Gombas. You can follow him at Bets and Picks MMA. BT and I have been going back and forth on this one. We got into it a little bit last week. We're going to see a rematch coming up at UFC 294 of Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira. Andrew, right now you can get Charles Oliveira at BetMGM at plus 260. Charles Oliveira at plus 260. I think the fight looks completely different than the first time, and I think Du Bronx wins. What say you?
Yeah, I bet Makhachev the first fight. I think the line's about right now. I don't really know why they're doing this rematch. I feel like there's so many interesting fights for Islam at 155. His only title defense being against a 145-pounder. Obviously, that was a great fight. And given the fact that Volk kind of has cleared out most of his division at 45, I know he's got a fight with Dupiria coming up in all likelihood at the end of this year, early next year. But I'd rather see that rematch than this one. I felt like the first fight was very decisive, and Oliveira did get a great win in between. But I would have liked to seen him get one more, just because there's so many good prospects. I shouldn't say prospects, so many good contenders at 155 right now. Nonetheless, I'll be watching. Obviously, super hyped fight the first time. You can never count Charles Oliveira out. He's always dangerous. He has a high floor given his finishing upside in every single fight, whether it be on the feet or on the mat. So I'm excited, looking forward to it. But yeah, I'm taking Islam again.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was a very polite way for Andrew to tell you to stop fantasizing, Sean. We all saw what happened, dude. I don't know why, like, it's weird how you like get in this Peter Pan land, Sean, where you're like, yeah, but what happened? He got choked out in 30 seconds.
Hold on. Let me back it up then with some evidence. All right. Look, the fight versus Volk that Andrew was talking about was great. Before that, you know who Islam beat, dude? Bobby Green, Dan Hooker, Thiago Moises, and some guy I've never heard of named Ramos.
Are they fighting that night?
No, but let me tell you in the same time period who Charles Oliveira beat. Have you heard of Beneil Dariush, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, and El Kukui back when he was El Kukui? What I'm telling you, dude, is the difference in experience level of these guys, who they've actually fought, is nothing close to each other. But maybe you and Andrew are right, and maybe we see the same thing. Maybe Oliveira goes out there and gets his ass kicked again.
I too have used the internet, and I looked at something on, what is this, October 2022, UFC 280, Islam Makhachev wins by arm triangle in round 2. Well, that's crazy.
I remember.
You know,
I remember.
That's right. But listen, you a man can dream. A man can dream there, dude. It's good.
Thank you.
What are you more into this week, Sean, for action? Are you into Bellator at all? Bellator 300? Or are you more into the UFC card this weekend? Like, is there anything? Which one tickles your fancy more this weekend?
I think he was asking you that, Andrew.
Oh, okay. I'm a UFC guy. I'll be betting Bellator. I'll be watching it, but I feel like a lot of these Bellator fights, like I have the odds up right here. The main event is
they're large, dude.
My like minus 2,000 on Usman Nurmagomedov versus Brent Primus.
It's like hard a boxing card.
Yeah, it's hard to get excited about that for me. I mean, then you've got Chris Cyborg minus 700. There will be some good fights though. There's Grant Neal versus Romero Cotton should be a good one. Liam McCourt versus Sarah McMahon. Kai Kamaka versus Henry Corrales. But I would lean towards the UFC card in terms of what I'm more looking forward to. Obviously, main event, you've got a guy in Grant Dawson who hasn't lost in the UFC, who is getting a lot of respect at the betting window, and I think rightfully so. He's a pretty solid favorite here. But some more competitively lined fights on the card, like Ian Kudalaba versus Philip Lins. Kudalaba's never in a boring fight. Joe Pyfer versus Al Hassan has fireworks written all over it. Buckley Morono should be a fun one. So there's some sneaky good fights on this card. Obviously, Drew Dober, fan favorite, is fighting Rick Glenn. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Bill Algeo on the card versus Alex Hernandez. This is kind of a fun card, up and down. You mentioned Grant Dawson. He trained in Kansas City for a long time, so I've had my eyes on him. Do you think at some point he's going to be fighting for the belt? Is he that good?
Yeah, he's definitely a good fighter. I don't know about fighting for the belt. It has nothing to do with his skill set. It's just the fact that 155 is so loaded. Like, you have a dominant champ in Islam Makhachev. When I say dominant, I mean he hasn't lost in a very long time. He had a decisive win in his last fight, 2 fights ago over Oliveira, who he's fighting again. You have Gaethje, Poirier, Michael Chandler, and then you kind of have that next, I don't want to say next generation, but that next wave of contenders at 155, like Gamrot, Fiziev, Sarukian. So it's just it's just really hard to get to the top of that division. And he's a very good fighter, but it's just a Shark's tank, and it's hard to say he's going to get there.
Andrew, bringing it back forward a couple weeks to 294. What's your faith in Khamzat Chimaev as a heavy favorite? Because we haven't seen him at this weight class. Haven't really seen him in a while, so I don't really know what we're going to get from him. Paulo Costa is a bit of a wild card too, because he's always weird on fight week. But where are you leaning on that one, the co-main event?
Yeah, I think 185 is going to do Khamzat well. I think he's going to have a lot of success there. And in this fight, I think it's a good stylistic matchup for him. Obviously, Paulo Costa has been a fun fighter when he actually does fight. He's been one of the more inactive fighters over the last 5 years or so. But I do think the public overrates him a little bit in terms of skill set. Like I said, fun fighter. He has power on the feet, but I don't think his grappling's that good. I think he can tire. Obviously, he's very heavily muscled. I think Chimaev's going to get it done there. I think he's going to grapple him. I think he'll probably submit him. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing both of them back in the cage. To your point, it has been a while, and two guys who I just would really like to see be more active in the future.
Andrew, I can't remember if we've caught up since O'Malley was the champion. We're talking with Andrew Gombis at Bets and Picks MMA here on Tapped Out. Now that O'Malley is the guy that has the strap, how long do you think he's the champion?
That really depends on what his next matchup is. They're talking like it could be a familiar opponent for him in Chito Vera, which I think is a very winnable fight for him. Whereas if it's Merab, I think Merab's a harder stylistic matchup for O'Malley. So it's one of those situations where his next fight could be his last as the champ, or depending on who he gets, it really just depends on styles, because I do think that there are some styles in there, guys near the top like Vera, Sandhagen, who I think are better matchups for O'Malley than, say, a Merab or an Umar Nurmagomedov. So it's going to be really interesting. That's probably the most exciting weight class right now. I always used to say 155 was the best weight class, but I feel like this is the first year, maybe last year, that there's another weight class that I would probably put at the top of the food chain, and that's bantamweight, which is Sean O'Malley's division at the moment. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out.
When we get to John Jones versus Stipe, is there a number that you like Stipe at? Do you already like him as heavy a dog as he is, just because this has been his weight class? He's been, regarded sometimes as the heavyweight GOAT. I know John is John, but is there a place or a number where you would put your stock in Stipe and you would bet on him?
Yeah, there's always a number, and I'm not sure if it's going to get there. I have to do a little bit more due diligence on the fight, but my gut tells me that John's going to win. I do think Stipe is probably a tougher stylistic matchup than Gane was, just because Stipe obviously comes from a wrestling background, and John got Gane down very quickly and submitted him. Obviously, John Jones being the GOAT, he's the warranted favorite. I was very skeptical of his comeback after 3 years off, up a weight class. Didn't look great on his way out the last time, but he did what he does. He comes back, gets an early submission. Stipe has kind of been on the sidelines for a long time now. His last fight coming, I want to say it was in March of 2021 off the top of my head. Knockout loss to Francis Ngannou. He's not a spring chicken either. There's a lot of question marks going to that fight. My gut tells me that John gets it done, but Stipe is a guy that we learned to not count out in the past, and so I won't be counting him out this time.
Andrew, after that fight, do you think both guys lay down the gloves and retire?
I don't know. It's tough to say. I think if Stipe loses, he probably will. I think John, if he loses, they probably rematch. I also think that it kind of depends on John Jones's life situation. I mean, if he has a ton of money in the bank, he probably says, all right, time to go. But I don't know. We can only speculate about his off the field life and if he really does have enough money to retire, or if he wants to put another couple training camps in, he could probably make a few more $1 million. So it's really hard to predict. I think he came back for a reason, and he spent a lot of time trying to fit the mold of what a heavyweight looks like. He's put on weight, been in the gym, strength training. So it's really difficult to say, especially because you had those bigger matchups, like the potential matchup of him versus Ngannou isn't there. Him versus Gane already happened. Stipe is another big one. But after that, there really aren't many, if any, big names at heavyweight. No one really knows Tom Aspinall or Sergey Pavlovich yet. So maybe he does go out on a win. Maybe he wants to stick around. I'm not really leaning one way or another. I think the sport's better with him in it. But then again, he's been around for so long that if he wanted to hang it up, no one would have any argument against it, especially considering he's had a flawless career.
I got about 90 seconds, Andrew. The other big title fight got announced recently. No surprise. Leon versus Colby. Colby a slight dog right now. What are your early leanings on that one?
Yeah, my early lean is Colby. I do think that his style is problematic for most people, and I think could be problematic for Leon as well. We know what you're getting with Colby. He pushes a pace. He weaponizes cardio. He's a good wrestler. So Leon definitely is the better striker, but he's going to be worried about the takedown. He's going to potentially be dragged into deep waters. It's a very intriguing fight. Obviously, you have the inactivity of Colby. It's been over a year and a half since his last fight. I'm very curious to see what he comes in here looking like. They have the common opponent in Usman, the recent common opponent in Usman. I do think Usman's kind of nearing the end, potentially injured going into that last fight. I'm not trying to take anything away from Leon, but I don't think it's a simple equation of Leon beat Usman beat Colby, so Leon beats Colby. I think it's a very competitive fight, but I'm leaning Colby at the moment. I like backing guys that are going to attempt a lot of takedowns, that have cardio to go 5 rounds, that are going to weaponize pace and really nonstop go after their opponents, especially when their opponent, like Leon, is primarily a striker. Obviously, he's a capable grappler too, or else he wouldn't be in the position he's in. But I do think Colby has some serious advantages here. And yeah, my early lean is that he gets it done.
I'm with you there, my guy. My early lean is also Colby. My only concern is, what are the odds going to look like? If everybody bets Colby the way you and I are thinking, and he goes off as a favorite, then maybe I'll take the champion as an underdog. But we'll have to see what the odds look like at BetMGM that night. Before that, we'll get you back on. He's Andrew Gombis at Bets and Picks MMA. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Have a great night.
You got it.
Sweet. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Sean Levine will step into the cage with Brendan Tobin in Are You Gonna Fight Me?
I'm gonna fight your ass!
Here on Tapped Out.
That's right, fight me like a man.
Only on the BetQL network.
You know the rules. I want a good, clean fight. When I tell you to break, I want you to step back out my command and break. Now go back to the corner and come out fighting at the bell.
All right, welcome back into Tapped Out here on the BetQL Network, YouTube, on the Odyssey app. That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. And since we can't seem to get along, let's get it on. You know the segment's called You're Gonna Fight Me. Now that some time has passed, BT, I'm more surprised that Sean Strickland has the belt than Sean O'Malley. Of the Seans that have the strap, now that it's been a couple of months, I can't believe Sean Strickland's a champion. You gonna fight me?
No, I'm not going to fight you. It's crazy. It's crazy. Oh, I think it's even just crazier the way that it happened. You know, he knocked him down in the first round, and just from there on out, Izzy really just never had an answer. We've never really seen him in that type of fight before. I mean, we've seen him lose. We've seen him lose to Jan Blachowicz, getting laid on basically the entire fight. We saw him obviously get knocked out late, but a fight that he was pretty much dominating the whole way. So to see him get put on the ground like that and then just never really have a response for it was really crazy. But you got to give Sean all the credit in the world. Like, I think the thing that's interesting about it is Sean Strickland won a Sean Strickland fight. It's not like he did anything that we've never seen from him before. I think it's almost more shocking on who he did it to, because you never thought he'd be able to do it to a guy who we were probably regarding as, you know, best striker in the last probably half decade in the UFC.
Now, what people really want to know is, were you there in person when Pereira knocked out Adesanya?
Bro, I was. He was. And you know what's actually fun? It's kind of crazy because I see all this stuff about Izzy with getting a DUI, I guess, before the fight actually happened. And I got to tell you, I've never seen anybody, I don't know how, but he was hammered getting to that podium. And it wasn't that much time that passed. So that dude got after it. So pretty wild. But you know, you hope everything's okay with them and that everything, you know, we see sometimes these guys can cut pretty loose as they get out of the cage. And, you know, maybe he thought that it was one of these things where he was going to beat Sean Strickland easily and didn't think he had to train that hard, pull a John Jones, if you will. And maybe it caught up with him. I don't know.
All right. Well, speaking of Izzy and that DUI, obviously tough times for that guy. Inside the octagon, you're going to fight me if I say the prime of Israel Adesanya is over?
Yeah, I'm going to fight you on that. I don't think it's necessarily over. I think that was a tough style for him on that night. Could he figure it out again? I could see him figuring it out again. You know, he just did this against Alex Pereira, and that was a guy that he had lost to a few times. But I think it's too early to say that the prime of him is over. I think, first of all, I mean, he's taken out most of that division, so there's not many guys in that division. If they do get the belt from Sean Strickland, you can't tell me that he's not going to go out there and smoke. But if Sean Strickland holds the belt for a little bit, it could be a challenge for him.
Earlier this week, Dana was talking about a, quote, shock, unquote, return at UFC 300. I'm pretty sure I started this rumor, but at this point, you're going to fight me if I say I expect that to be Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, I'm going to fight you. I know it's been pretty crazy. I do think that you did start that because all the momentum I basically heard from this was after you brought that up on the show. I don't know where you heard that. I don't know where you saw it, but I don't know, man. I just have this feeling like Ronda doesn't have, unless like Ronda's hurting financially or something like that and just wants to cash out one last time. You know, she just had, you know, some kids. I don't know. I would find that very surprising that she would be the shock return.
You were talking last show about Old Timers Day, right? And it does kind of feel like that. They're talking about, well, maybe we can bring back Prosner and maybe, you know, we'll get this guy or this gal, Ronda Rousey, in the octagon. You're going to fight me if I say Old Timers Day is the way to go. Conor McGregor is still the biggest possible draw they could have at UFC 300.
No, I don't like that idea at all. Like, we talk about this all the time on this show. Like, when it looks like it's done, it's done. Like, how many times do we do on the show? Hey, is that the end for Tony Ferguson? Is this the end for Robbie Lawler? Is this
then give me a bigger name? What
It
would
gets
draw
sad.
more eyeballs and more money to UFC
Bro,
300
did you see the
than
ending
Conor
of
McGregor?
BJ Penn? Did you see the ending of BJ Penn? That guy's a
Yeah,
legend,
no,
and it was that
I
Anderson
remember.
Silva. It got sad. Like,
I
dude, when it's
remember.
gone, it's gone. You think you want it until you don't.
See, the difference between those guys, BJ Penn, Donald Cerrone, Tony Ferguson, all Hall of Famers, Conor McGregor is the biggest draw in the history of mixed martial arts. I think if he's 85 years old with the cane and you walk him out there with a ventilator, you're still going to get some pretty good pay-per-view buys. I'm telling you, and producer Jake agrees, I think the biggest fight you can make, and this isn't me hoping I'm right, this is me knowing that I'm right, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler is probably the biggest fight you could possibly make. Give me a bigger one.
Right now in the UFC, a bigger fight than that?
Yeah, you got a few months, UFC 300, so you can give me any two names you can come up with that could actually fight each other. I think it has to involve Conor McGregor.
I mean, it's tough. Yeah, obviously Conor's going to be the biggest draw, but like, is it the best fight? Like, not even close. It's
close.
like two of these guys. I mean, Conor we haven't seen look good in a while, and Michael Chandler's been a fun addition to the roster, but he hasn't been close to the best UFC lightweight. Now he's going up a weight class to fight Conor. Like, the one thing I'm disappointed with Izzy losing, I really wanted to see Izzy versus Hamzat. I feel like that would have been a really great main event.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know who the dance partner is for Sean O'Malley to really do that right now.
Right.
So, I mean,
look where we found ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I get you. But, and then John versus who? I guess John versus Pavlovich. Pavlovich does something crazy. That's probably like the best. That's probably the best one I could give you right now. Like, if you told me what would really intrigue you, but I get it. Pavlovich isn't really as known yet, but that'd be a pretty crazy main event.
Honestly, the best thing could possibly happen, I would think, somehow Nate Diaz re-signs, right? The fight with Jake Paul is over with. He's talking about coming back to the UFC. It's been, a year and change now that he's been off. He comes back, and then they have Conor fight Nate at UFC 300. And I know you're just going to say it's Old Timers Day and all that stuff, but that to me is probably the biggest potential fight that they could make. But we move on here on You Gonna Fight Me. I rewatched Volk versus Ortega the other night. You're going to fight me if I say Ortega's the closest guy that I've ever seen to finishing Volkanovski. He was damn close.
He was very close. I mean, in a moment, probably. I mean, I still think Max Holloway got the edge on one of his fights. So I would say that's the closest I've seen him lose or come to losing. But look, it was crazy. I don't know how Volkanovski got out of that. It was he's incredible. I think one of the things that's honestly one of the best things about Alexander Volkanovski is not just his talent, but his championship will. I mean, that guy, when it looks bleak, even when you go back to the Islam fight, whether you thought he won, whether you thought he lost, at the end of that thing, he's on top. Usually by the end of these fights, even with the Holloway fights, usually by the end, he's getting the best of his opponent. And I think that's the thing you most marvel at when it comes to Alexander Volkanovski.
The blessed is best. And you mentioned Max Holloway there a couple of times. I was checking out. Dude, he's currently the number 12 pound-for-pound ranked fighter in the world. You're going to fight me if I say, I think he fights Volkanovski one more time.
I kind of hope so.
Me too.
I just think he deserves it. He's so damn good. It sucks for Volk that nobody's really stepped up in his place. The Arnold Allens of the world who can't get to him. Ilia Topuria. It's kind of crazy. We're talking about UFC 300. None of us have mentioned Volk. But I don't know. I mean, him versus Islam, I suppose, UFC 300, that could be a main event. But, yeah, I don't know. I just think that I don't know who else has really stepped up that deserves it. It probably will be Topuria. But, yeah, I think Max, there shouldn't be – I just think Max is just such a special case of he should get another shot. Most of the competition has been pretty close. I'd like to see where another one goes with that one. But I can get why Volk doesn't.
Well, of course, he's in theory, not in theory, and according to the record, he's won the fight 3 separate times. Why would he do it a fourth? Fans like you and I, now we're at the point where like, you know what? I think I kind of like to see it. And from Max's perspective, how the narrative would completely change if somehow he was able to take him out the 4th time. Then we look at Max and go, oh, damn, did he have a career as good as Alexander Volkanovski? But who knows if we ever see the fight again. You mentioned Arnold Allen. There was a fight announced earlier today. He's going to be in the octagon with How do I say that guy's last name?
Evilov.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. You should take over for Vanna White once that whole run is over with. All right, you're gonna fight me here. Let's talk a little football. We got a couple of minutes left.
Spinning the letters?
Yeah, you know he wouldn't like that job.
What does that have to do with saying words?
Oh, I don't know. You don't think she's good at pronouncing after turning that many letters over the years?
She doesn't pronounce them.
She'd be damn good if she did. Anyway, Eagles and Niners, the last two undefeated teams.
Job.
Well, Sajak's going to retire pretty soon. Eagles and Niners, the last two undefeated teams. You're going to fight me if I say that's your NFC championship game for sure.
Probably. I don't think you can count the Cowboys out yet. Even with their embarrassing loss to the Cardinals, I still think that defense is damn good. So I still think
they play each other actually this week.
I gotta tell you, the Lions, man, the Lions are looking pretty damn impressive. So I wouldn't rule them out. I think the 49ers look way more overwhelming than the Eagles. Like if you were to tell me like only one of those teams is going to make it, I don't know who is beating the 49ers. They look like a monster. It looks like everybody who they face, they steamroll over and they're playing a different game.
Right now, BetMGM, they're the co-favorites to win the Super Bowl. So your opinion is shared by many, including the odds makers. They're like 5.5 to 1 to win it. Same thing with the Chiefs, followed by Philly. The Cowboys and the 49ers go at it this weekend, so we'll get a chance to see who's better, at least right now. The Dolphins, man, got smoked by the Buffalo Bills. Is it still a smart bet? You're going to fight me if I say I have completely changed course and I'm back to Buffalo winning the division?
Well, that just makes you a coward, but I understand why. It was a hell of a showing. I think a lot of people were throwing dirt on the Bills early. You would know it because Jim Nantz and Tony Romo basically sent the entire broadcast lecturing everybody. It was very annoying.
Very.
But no, I think that the biggest concern with the Dolphins right now is their defense. I mean, their defense stinks. They've been gutted by any good team they've faced has put up a lot of yards on them. They're fortunate that they have a team that can put up a lot of yards, but it's not a great recipe for success in the playoffs. People think that they have the talent, but they got to put it all together. So I got to give the respect to the Bills right now because they've dominated that matchup over the last 4 years. And last year it was those games were close. This one was not close. It was an ass kicking.
Thanks, Jim, says Tony Romo 100 times
so
a broadcast. Thanks, Jim. And the worst part is, man, I've been on this for years. I can't believe anybody ever thought that guy was good. Well, I'm here on my high horse. He starts stories and then just stops. He doesn't finish it. He'll be like, that play will remind me of Jim, and then there's nothing. I don't get it. Rough week for Miami, by the way. You gonna fight me if I say they screwed up the Damian Lillard thing, or is that somebody else's fault?
No, I mean they definitely deserve. Pat Riley deserves some blame on that for sure. I can't deny that. It has been a rough week. Other than Jimmy Butler's fantastic hair at Media Day. Plus the Marlins lost game one of their wild card. So,
dude, did you have any idea that hair was coming? That's the wildest thing I've ever seen.
I didn't. I'm not surprised because I'll tell you, like last year in the locker room, Jimmy was really pissed at ESPN. Like he's like, I'm not giving ESPN any interviews because they wouldn't use his Media Day headshot. That's supposed to be the rules. And they were using his NBA 2K headshot instead. And so he was refusing to give them interviews. And so I wasn't very surprised that he brought something to top himself this year.
He's not going to play with that hair, right? That's not his.
He's already braided it for camp. Yeah.
Okay.
He just simply wants it for the headshot and the media guide.
That's a great head of hair. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, and I'm bald. And you're listening to us on the BetQL network.
We're back with more Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Tapping out here on the BetQL Network. We appreciate you checking us out, YouTube, Odyssey, however you got us. That's Brendan. I'm the Sports Machine. Let's make some money. Saturday night, we've got action in the Octagon. Grant Dawson, heavy favorite, minus 450 BT against Bobby Green at plus 325. You talked about this last week. Bobby Green's just one of those guys, if you're an odds maker, whether he's a favorite or an underdog, it's tough to put a number on him. Bobby Green at plus 325 look good enough for you?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, look, Bobby's coming off a win. It was against Tony Ferguson, so, take that for what it's worth. But, I mean, the guy has been in there with a lot of dogs, tough guys, not underdogs. He's been in there with some really tough competition, and I do think that Grant's kind of getting this step up against him. But, yeah, I think that intrigues me. I mean, like, Bobby Green going out there and getting a victory, I think there's some value in that for sure.
Appreciate you clearing up that you meant dogs, not underdogs or actual canines.
Wanted to be clear.
Yep, thanks. Yep, appreciate you. Drew Dober, another big favorite, minus 450. Same odds as Grant Dawson versus Ricky Glenn at plus 340. Can I talk you into Ricky Glenn underdog money against the finest jaw to ever fight, Drew Dober?
When you say finest jaw, you just mean jawline, right? Like it's like, is that what you just in?
Oh, we got a funny man.
I'm just wondering.
His jawline is perfect.
He is. He's a handsome man. Drew Dober. Drew Dober's a good-looking fella for sure. Yeah, I am. I think I'd go Drew Dober. I think I'd go Drew Dober getting a KO. It's a little bit more of a tolerable number. It's like minus like 150 on that night. So I think that's just a little bit more bearable. But I do think that Dober and his beautiful chin will find Glenn's chin and get this victory.
I was looking at that knockout number for Dober also. I don't know if minus 150 is enough for me. Maybe I'll try to land the round. Let's call it Drew Dober in the second. Bill Algeo, the favorite, against Alex Hernandez at plus 115. Some guys just rub you the wrong way the first time you see them. What do they say about first impressions, right? Like, it's tough. I remember the first time that I really found out about Alex Hernandez was against Cowboy Cerrone, and I got behind him that night, and I put a bunch of money on him because he was talking smack, and I felt good. And I think that was the last time Donald Cerrone won a fight. Is that right? And I'm kind of joking, but I'm kind of not. I think that Alex Hernandez maybe is his last win. Maybe producer Jake can get on that. Either way.
I can hit that wiki real quick for you on Donald Cerrone and his last victory. His last victory was against Al Iaquinta in 2019, but the win before that was Alexander Hernandez. So that little runski that he had beating Mike Perry. I think he had just become a dad. Remember Dad Cerrone? Like that was the thing.
Yeah, I do.
So
I love Dad
yes,
Cerrone.
that's what you're looking back to. But yes, Alexander Hernandez was talking a lot of smack in that time being, and he's basically been a 500 fighter since.
So does he win on Saturday night against Bill Algeo? Do you take the underdog Alex Hernandez at plus 115? I think I will.
Yeah, I think as a dog, I think that's okay. He's coming off a win over Jim Miller in February, so been pretty active. You have Algeo who's coming off a win against TJ Brown in April. I still think I'll go with Hernandez to get the victory.
Joaquin Buckley looked great. He looked so good that he just ripped his shirt right off at the press conference. Minus 175 favorite against Alex Morono at plus 145. I think I'm taking that chiseled six-pack of Joaquin Buckley. I'll pay minus 175.
The thing that you love about Joaquin Buckley is like the guy it's one of those, you talk about some of the all-time highlights, right? Like everybody, you always have to see the kick off the cage from Showtime. Because like when you go to a UFC show, they play the awesome they play the Baba O'Reilly, the montage. If anybody's, it's like one of the coolest things right before a main card starts. Like they play the Who, and it's like a just on point montage of like the greatest finishes in UFC history. And Joaquin Buckley's up there with one of the greatest. So it's tough to not always like think about when you watch a Joaquin Buckley fight, am I going to see something incredible? Am I going to see something really, really cool? And so that always makes me root for him no matter when he steps in the cage, because he's got one of the all-time finishes.
Do you know what highlight currently finishes that montage you're talking about? Because I just watched it.
I don't.
Michael Chandler kicking Tony Ferguson straight in the face. That's how they wrap that thing up. So you're right. The production of that is just so damn good.
But you like good, it's like it's Goosey's galore. Like as soon as you get chills, so you just running through all
live beat in the house. I mean, you're watching the prelims and the lights go down. The main card's coming up. They put that little 5-minute little video clip on. It's great. Ion Cutelaba versus Felipe Lins right now, plus 125. You can get the favorite Cutelaba at minus 150. Again, I think I'm going to pay for that on Saturday night.
Yeah, but you know what I don't like? Cutelaba going clean shaven. You know,
I thought he looked great.
I don't know about that.
Full head of hair, clean shaven.
I don't know, dude. I like Cutelaba looking like going out there. He's got the whole look going out there. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm digging this whole look from him. Lins has been on a bit of a run. I think I'm going to go with him getting the win over Cutelaba, clean shaven.
You won't bet on a man that's clean shaven, but you'll bet on a man that's painted his entire body green. All right. A little weird, but fine. We're not too far away from UFC 294. Before we wrap things up, Islam versus Oliveira. We've talked plenty about that. Haven't spent a lot of time on Hamzat versus Paulo Costa. I think the interesting question is, what Hamzat do we get? Like, how surprised are you going to be if Hamzat comes in there, ragdolls him, it's done in one, versus this thing takes a while? Because if you ask me, I think Hamzat wins. Probably takes him a few rounds, though. Give me Chimaev in the third.
That's what honestly, dude, I'm hoping he comes in there and he ragdolls Paulo Costa. And that's nothing against Paulo Costa, but, you know, as you sit here and we talked earlier in the show about what's UFC 300 going to be, I think that Hamzat has a chance to put himself at least to be on that card if he can go do something spectacular. I think the UFC
say what you want to say. Say what you want to say. You want to say that he's got a chance to fight in the pay-per-view if he looks great, right? Or I'm sorry, in the main event.
Well, I know. I think if he wins, even if he wins, I think that there'll definitely be a buzz for him to fight. But I think that the thing that's been disappointing with Hamzat is that he had this rocket start to his career and then like had this weirdness happen. I know that, you know, he dealt with a bad case of COVID and nearly stepped away, but I'm talking about even when he's been back, you know, Gilbert Burns gave him all he could handle, you know, then missing weight. Like, I think that I'd like to see Hamzat just get back to just the mauler that he is and get everybody excited to see, hey, can this guy be champion again? Because he felt like the boogeyman. He felt like a guy that was inevitable. And I think for right now, there's just a lot of mystery around him. And so I would be just very excited as a fan, you know, just to see him go out there and dominate Paulo and have a monster performance and call somebody out and do something crazy. I think that's one of the best things that could happen for the sport as a fan is Hamzat Chimaev and getting on a little bit of a title run here.
I agree with you, and I'll take it one step further before we wrap things up for today's show. I think that's best case scenario for the UFC for 300, which is still a handful of months away, is Hamzat goes out there, beats up Paulo Costa. I mean, ragdolls him, gets the fans back behind him. Maybe Israel Adesanya gets the rematch against Sean Strickland. Izzy gets his belt back. And then that's probably your main event, right? You give Hamzat a chance to fight for the belt against Israel Adesanya at UFC 300. Not too bad.
No, that'd be an amazing fight. I mean, look, even if Sean Strickland does keep the belt, I think that'd be a fun build. I don't know if that's enough to main event 300, but it's certainly enough to main event a pay-per-view that I'd be interested in. I think it's a fun matchup. And I gotta tell you, I don't know who wins that fight. It's a tough call because, you know, I think Hamzat, there's always questions about like how long he can last. You know, Sean Strickland has cardio for days. I think it's a fun matchup, but I think that there's a lot. I think that you could come out of that fight because look, we talked about this main event. You think that Charlie Olive's getting disrespected. I get you. I'm not going to argue with you here, but it's still a fight we've pretty recently seen. Like Andrew said earlier in the show, it's going to take a little bit for me to get as excited for that as I am for the co-main event, mostly because of the return of Hamzat. So I think that Islam really can't do anything in this fight that gets him a lot of buzz because what are you going to do?
He did already.
Oliveira in 10 seconds? Like, I don't know what he could do. Oliveira getting the belt back would be huge. That'd be cool. That'd be a cool story. But I think Hamzat going out and getting a win the way that he does, that would get everybody crazy. And I don't mean to I'm not trying to overlook Paulo Costa. It's just like we've kind of been in the Paulo Costa well. I kind of think we know what his ceiling is. I don't think that guy's going to be champion, even though, we're getting more surprises at champion than we probably ever have in the history of the sport. But I think it's Hamzat's show if he wants it.
Same exact odds that night for what it's worth at UFC 294, the main and the co-main. Before we wrap up, which plus 260 underdog is more likely to pull off the upset? Oliveira over Islam or Costa over Chimaev?
Wow.
It's Oliveira. It's Charles Oliveira, man. More submissions than anybody in the history of the UFC. Surefire Hall of Famer. Took out Dariush and Gaethje and Poirier and Chandler and Kukui. You know the answer.
Yeah, but I've already seen this fight. Like,
I can't wait for this one, dude. I can't wait for this fight.
I don't understand why. I know you love Charles Oliveira. God love you. You didn't even care when he lost the belt on the scale. You sat there, you defended him, even though
half a pound between friends.
Even though he disgraced himself as champion and lost his belt, you stood by him. God love you. I think there's only one person you love in sports more than Charlie Olives, and that's Patrick Mahomes. Other than that, I think it's Charlie Olives. I think you love him more than anybody, and that's great. That being said, Paulo Costa more likely to win at 260, plus 260.
Oh, Patrick Mahomes would beat up all these guys. It's not even close. However he won it, done in one. So are we.
How sick are you of all the Taylor Swift stuff?
Dude, enough. I can't even talk about it. I'm done. Literally. I will not speak about it with you. That's Brendan. Ugh, I almost vomited in my mouth. That's Brendan Tobin. We're the Super Bowl champions. Who gives a damn? That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. For Jake Noacker, that's Tapped Out. We'll catch you next week right here.